The vast emptiness of space held many secrets, but none quite as terrifying as the truth about humanity. The Galactic Council had spent centuries watching Earth from afar, studying what they believed to be just another primitive species struggling to reach the stars. They couldn't have been more wrong. Captain Tom Miller stood at the bridge of the USS Nightshade, Earth's first deep space vessel capable of faster-than-light travel. The year was 2157, and humanity had finally broken free from the solar system's gravitational embrace. What they didn't know was that their achievement had triggered silent alarms across the galaxy. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual signal," reported Jack, the ship's communications officer. His fingers danced across the holographic display, trying to decode the mysterious transmission. "It's not like anything in our database." Before Miller could respond, the space around them warped and twisted. 3 massive ships materialized, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The alien vessels dwarfed the Nightshade, making Earth's proudest achievement look like a toy in comparison. "All stations, battle ready," Miller ordered, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. He knew humanity's first contact with alien life would come eventually, but not like this. Not with ships clearly designed for war. The alien transmission came through clear now, translated by the ship's AI, "Primitive vessel, you have breached quarantine protocols. Your species was not scheduled for contact for another 300 cycles. Prepare for inspection and possible termination." The crew of the Nightshade exchanged nervous glances. Termination? Quarantine? The implications were staggering. Earth had been deliberately isolated, kept away from the galactic community like a disease. What happened next would become legend among both humans and aliens alike. As the largest alien vessel attempted to capture the Nightshade with some kind of energy field, Miller made a decision that would change the course of history. Instead of surrendering, he ordered the ship to fire up its experimental emergency systems. "Sir, the dark matter drive isn't tested for combat situations," warned Susan, the chief engineer. "We don't know what could happen. Better to die trying than face whatever termination means," Miller replied, his jaw set with determination. Execute Protocol Nightmare. The dark matter drive was humanity's greatest secret, a system that could manipulate the very fabric of reality. It was dangerous, unstable, and exactly what they needed. As the alien energy field began to envelop the Nightshade, Miller gave the order. The space around them screamed. There was no other way to describe it. Reality itself seemed to tear apart as dark matter erupted from the Nightshade's drive, creating a cascade of impossible physics that no alien sensor could comprehend. The energy field shattered, and the alien ship's systems went haywire. What the aliens saw that day would haunt them forever. Their sensors showed the human vessel splitting into multiple quantum states, existing in several places at once, breaking every known law of physics. The Nightshade appeared to be everywhere and nowhere, a ghost ship that defied explanation. The alien commanders watched in horror as their advanced systems failed to lock onto the human vessel. Their energy weapons passed through phantom images, while the real Nightshade seemed to phase in and out of existence. It was chaos theory weaponized, uncertainty principles turned into shields, and darkness itself bent to human will. "By the Ancient Ones," the alien admiral whispered, watching the impossible unfold. "They've weaponized their own ignorance of physics. They don't know enough about universal laws to be bound by them." The Nightshade's crew didn't fully understand what was happening either, but they knew they had surprised their would-be captors. The alien ships began to retreat, their formations broken by fear of the unknown. As the alien vessels disappeared into hyperspace, Miller ordered the dark matter drive to power down. The Nightshade returned to normal space, its crew shaken but alive. They had just proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, it was their willingness to push boundaries that older, more advanced civilizations considered unbreakable. "Send a message to Earth," Miller commanded, watching the stars return to their normal state. Tell them we're not alone, and we're not welcome. But most importantly, tell them we're ready. The message was sent, and with it, humanity's age of innocence ended. The galaxy would soon learn that quarantining Earth hadn't contained a primitive species, it had bottled up something far more dangerous, a species that turned their worst fears into weapons, their ignorance into strength, and their determination into destiny. The monsters weren't coming to Earth. They had been there all along, wearing human faces and dreaming of stars. The news of the USS Nightshade's encounter spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. In their grand chamber, floating above a nameless star, the representatives of 1,000 species gathered in emergency session. Their worst fears had been realized, the quarantined species had broken free. The humans did what? Asked the High Speaker, his crystalline form vibrating with concern. The admiral who had encountered the Nightshade projected his memory of the event for all to see. The council chamber filled with gasps and murmurs of horror as they watched the human vessel break fundamental laws of physics. The dark matter drive's effects played out before them, a demonstration of chaos that shouldn't have been possible. They don't understand enough physics to know they can't do that, explained Admiral Rex, his scaled skin pale with remembered fear. Their ignorance makes them more dangerous than any advanced civilization. They try things we would never consider because we know better. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for war. The Nightshade's encounter had confirmed they weren't alone, and weren't welcome. Military leaders and scientists gathered at the United Defense Command, reviewing the ship's data and planning humanity's response. The aliens' technology is advanced, General Anderson addressed the room, but their thinking is rigid. They follow rules we haven't even discovered yet. That's their weakness. Dr. Helen Ward, lead scientist of the Dark Matter Project, stepped forward. Her team had created the drive that saved the Nightshade, and now they had even more radical ideas. We've analyzed the alien sensor data. They're terrified of how we manipulate reality because they don't understand our methods. We can use that. In the following weeks, humanity's industrial might turn toward defense. They didn't try to copy the aliens' advanced technology, instead, they embraced their own crude but effective solutions. They built weapons that shouldn't work, ships that violated alien physics, and defense systems that turned scientific impossibilities into military advantages. The Galactic Council's spies watched in growing horror as humans launched their new fleet. Each ship carried what the aliens considered abominations, drives that bent space without proper calculations, weapons that ignored safety protocols, and shields that worked because humans didn't know they shouldn't. They're expanding exponentially, reported one observer to the council. Their solutions are primitive, dangerous, and completely unpredictable. They're like children with fusion bombs, except the children don't know they should be afraid. The council voted to establish a containment zone around Earth, but it was too late. Human ships had already scattered across nearby systems, setting up bases and colonies. Each human outpost became a nightmare for alien sensors, a place where reality itself seemed to hiccup and twist. One council member, older and wiser than most, shared a disturbing observation. We quarantined them because we saw their potential for violence, but we never considered their potential for innovation. In our effort to protect the galaxy from their aggression, we forced them to develop in isolation, without the constraints of proper scientific knowledge. We didn't contain the monsters, we created them. The humans, meanwhile, had discovered something incredible. Dr. Ward's team found that their impossible technologies worked better the further they got from alien-controlled space. It's as if their belief in limitations actually creates those limitations, she explained to military leaders. But in unexplored space, where no one has set the rules yet, we can do almost anything. General Anderson smiled at this news. Then we'll go where they won't follow. We'll break every rule they have, use every impossible advantage we can find. They thought we were monsters to be caged, let's show them what real monsters can do. The stage was set for a conflict unlike any the galaxy had seen. The humans, with their impossible ships and reality-bending weapons, against the unified might of the Galactic Council. But the Council was learning a harsh lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the most advanced technology, but the one who doesn't know enough to be bound by its limitations. As human ships pushed further into space, the aliens began to realize their greatest mistake. They hadn't prevented humanity from becoming a threat, they had prevented humanity from learning why they shouldn't try the impossible. And now, the impossible was becoming humanity's greatest weapon. 3 months after the initial contact, humanity had spread across 17 star systems. Each human colony became a dark spot in the Galactic Council's carefully maintained order, places where their sensors couldn't penetrate and their laws of physics seemed more like suggestions than rules. On the frontier colony of New Haven, Dr. Ward stood before her newest creation. The reality distortion field generator towered above her, a mess of cables and dark matter containers that no alien engineer would consider functional. Yet it worked, creating a bubble where human innovation could run wild. The aliens think their physics are universal laws, she told her team as they activated the device. But we're proving that reality is more flexible than they imagined. Their certainty is their weakness. The generator hummed to life, and the space around New Haven began to shift. Stars seemed to dance in impossible patterns, and light bent in ways that made alien observers' instruments short-circuit. But inside the field, the human colonists went about their day normally, their minds unburdened by the knowledge of what should be impossible. Meanwhile, in the depths of Council space, the first major confrontation was brewing. A Council peacekeeping fleet had cornered 3 human vessels near a disputed mining colony. The aliens had brought overwhelming force, 30 ships against 3. "Surrender now," the Council commander broadcast. "Your vessels are surrounded, and your primitive technology cannot stand against our combined might." Captain Lisa Banks of the USS Prometheus responded by doing something that made the alien crews question their sanity. She ordered her small fleet to activate their newly installed probability drives, experimental engines that didn't so much move through space as suggest multiple locations where the ships might be. "Let's show them why monsters don't play by the rules," Banks told her crew. Then she gave the order that would become famous across human space: release the uncertainties. The battle that followed would be struck from most Council records, not because they lost, but because what they saw violated too many of their fundamental beliefs about reality. The human ships seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, their weapons fire coming from everywhere and nowhere. When the Council fleet finally retreated, their commanders were shaking. How could they fight an enemy that treated quantum uncertainty like a weapon, that used their own ignorance of physics as a shield? Back on Earth, the United Defense Command received the battle reports with grim satisfaction. General Anderson addressed the war room, "Every time they try to contain us, we prove why they were right to fear us in the first place. But they don't understand, we're not breaking their laws of physics. We're writing our own." The Galactic Council was facing a crisis. Their members were divided on how to handle the human problem. Some advocated for full military action, while others warned that fighting humans only made them more dangerous. Every defeat taught them new ways to bend reality, and every victory made them bolder. "They're spreading like a virus," one Council member warned. "Each colony they establish creates another zone where our natural laws don't apply. They're not just ignoring our rules, they're rewriting the galaxy's operating system." Dr. Ward's team made another breakthrough during this time. They discovered that the aliens' rigid belief in physical limitations actually created a kind of universal consensus reality. But in spaces where humans were numerous, that consensus weakened, allowing for what the aliens considered miracles, and humans considered standard operating procedure. "We're not just fighting for territory," Dr. Ward explained to Earth's leaders. "We're fighting for the right to decide what's possible. Every human colony weakens their reality and strengthens ours." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just expanding, they were transforming the galaxy itself. In regions they controlled, the impossible became probable, and probability became a weapon. The monsters weren't just escaping their cage, they were rebuilding the zoo. As news of the Prometheus's victory spread, more human ships ventured into the unknown. Each carried a piece of Dr. Ward's technology, each crew ready to prove that humanity's greatest strength was their refusal to accept limitations. The Council's worst nightmare was coming true. The monsters they had tried to contain were now loose in the galaxy, and they were teaching reality itself new tricks. The age of certainty was over, the era of human possibility had begun. The Galactic Council made their first major mistake 6 months into the conflict. They tried to study human technology. On a secure research station deep in Council space, alien scientists gathered captured human devices for analysis. They believed understanding these impossible machines would help them counter humanity's expansion. They were wrong. "We've lost contact with Research Station Omega," announced a Council messenger, his holographic form flickering with distress. Last transmission indicated they successfully activated a captured human dark matter drive. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Every species present knew what that meant. The researchers had tried to understand human technology using alien science. It was like trying to measure chaos with a ruler. The rescue fleet arrived at Station Omega 3 days later. What they found defied explanation. The station existed in a bubble of fractured space-time, where probability had replaced certainty. Inside, laws of physics fought like wild animals, each trying to become the dominant reality. "This is what happens when you try to cage human chaos in alien logic," Dr. Ward explained to her team when the news reached Earth. "Their minds can't handle the contradiction, so reality itself breaks down." Meanwhile, humanity's military leaders had made a discovery of their own. The more the aliens tried to understand and counter human technology, the more powerful it became. It was as if human ignorance of proper physics was contagious, spreading through alien space like a reality-warping plague. General Anderson stood before the United Defense Command, presenting their latest strategy. "Every time they analyze our technology, they weaken their own universe. Their understanding creates gaps in their reality, gaps we can exploit." The human fleet began leaving broken devices as traps, each one a Trojan horse carrying the seed of chaos. Alien scientists couldn't resist studying them, and each study created another crack in their orderly universe. On the colony world of New Eden, humans demonstrated just how far they'd come. When a Council fleet arrived to claim the system, they found something unprecedented, a human city that existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously being and not being there. "Welcome to Schrodinger's colony," transmitted the colony's governor to the bewildered alien fleet. "You can't attack what you can't confirm exists. Would you like to observe us and collapse our wave function? I should warn you, the act of measurement might just collapse your fleet instead." The aliens retreated, their sensors overloaded by the quantum uncertainty of an entire human settlement. They had come expecting to find monsters, instead, they found gods playing dice with reality. In the Council chamber, the oldest and wisest member finally spoke the truth they all feared: "We assumed their ignorance was their weakness. Instead, it has become their greatest weapon. They don't break our laws of physics, they simply never learn to believe in them." Dr. Ward's team made another breakthrough during this period. They discovered that human children, born in space and raised without knowledge of alien physics, could manipulate reality instinctively. These probability children could reshape space with a thought, their minds unburdened by the concept of impossible. "Each generation will be stronger than the last," Dr. Ward reported to Earth's leaders. "Our children aren't learning what they can't do, they're imagining what they can." The Council's worst fears were being realized. Not only were they unable to contain humanity, but human influence was spreading like a contagion through their ordered universe. Each encounter weakened their reality, each study of human technology corrupted their physics. We didn't just create monsters, the High Speaker admitted in a closed session. We created reality benders, probability shapers. In trying to quarantine them, we forced them to evolve beyond our comprehension. As human ships pushed deeper into space, they left a changed universe in their wake. In these regions, possibility replaced certainty, imagination overwrote physics, and the impossible became routine. The monsters hadn't just escaped their cage, they were redesigning the laws of nature itself. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson: when you try to contain something you don't understand, you might just teach it how to become truly incomprehensible. Humanity hadn't just become the aliens' worst nightmare, they had become reality's wild card, chaos given form and purpose. 1 year into the conflict, the galaxy witnessed something that changed the war forever. On the edge of human space, a group of probability children made first contact with a dimension that shouldn't exist. They didn't use advanced technology or complex calculations, they simply wished for a door, and reality complied. The children aren't bound by our limitations, Dr. Ward reported to the Emergency Council on Earth. They don't just ignore the laws of physics, they're creating new ones. They're writing their own universe. The discovery sent shockwaves through both human and alien society. The probability children, led by 12-year-old Mark Wilson, had opened doorways to spaces between spaces, regions where thought shaped reality more directly than matter or energy. General Anderson watched the recordings with a mix of awe and concern. "We're not just fighting a war for territory anymore," he told his staff. "We're witnessing the next step in human evolution. Our children are becoming something even we don't understand." The Galactic Council's response was pure panic. Their sensors detected the new dimensional rifts spreading like cracks in reality's foundation. Each probability child became a walking violation of universal law, their mere existence challenging everything the aliens believed about the nature of space and time. In a desperate move, the Council attempted to isolate these regions of altered space. They deployed their most advanced technology, trying to create barriers between their ordered universe and humanity's chaos. But they had forgotten the first lesson of the war: human ignorance was contagious. "You can't build a wall to keep out possibilities," Mark told his fellow probability children as they gathered at New Haven's Academy. "The moment you try to define where something can't go, you admit it might go there." The children proved this by turning the Council's barriers into bridges. Every attempt to contain them created new pathways for their influence to spread. The aliens' certainty about what was impossible became a weapon against them, each barrier they built became a door waiting to be opened. Meanwhile, Dr. Ward's team made a terrifying discovery. The original dark matter drive had been just the beginning. The probability children were naturally generating fields that made the drive look like a toy. Reality around them became fluid, responding to human imagination rather than alien physics. "They're not breaking the universe," Dr. Ward explained to Earth's leaders. "They're teaching it new tricks. Every child born in space carries the potential to reshape reality. We're not adapting to the universe anymore, the universe is adapting to us." The Council's scientists observed this phenomenon with growing horror. In regions populated by probability children, their most basic scientific instruments stopped working. It wasn't that the devices were broken, reality itself had changed too much for them to function. "The monsters are evolving," one council member reported. "Each generation moves further from our understanding of natural law. Soon, they won't just ignore our rules, they'll exist in a universe that operates on entirely different principles." The human military saw the strategic advantage immediately. They began establishing colonies led by probability children, creating zones where alien technology simply couldn't function. These probability zones became humanity's most effective defense, regions where the very nature of reality favored human intuition over alien logic. Mark and his fellow probability children discovered they could communicate across vast distances by using what they called thought space, a dimension that existed wherever human imagination took root. The Council's attempts to monitor these communications failed. Their sensors couldn't detect something that existed only in possibility. "We're not fighting their weapons anymore," Mark explained to the adult leaders. "We're fighting their entire way of thinking. And we're winning because we never learned we couldn't." As the probability zones expanded, the galaxy began to change on a fundamental level. Reality became more fluid, more responsive to human will. The monsters hadn't just escaped their cage, they had begun terraforming the laws of physics themselves. The Council faced an impossible choice: adapt to a universe where their certainties meant nothing, or retreat to the shrinking regions where their physics still worked. The monsters they had tried to contain were now containing them, using the power of human imagination to reshape the galaxy one impossible act at a time. 18 months into the conflict, the galaxy reached a tipping point. The probability zones had grown so large that they began to merge, creating vast regions where alien physics held no power. The Council's ordered universe was shrinking, and with it, their ability to fight back against the human tide. In the heart of human space, Dr. Ward stood before a holographic map showing the spread of probability zones. Each glowing point represented a region where reality had been reshaped by human influence. The map looked like a web of cracks spreading through the galaxy's foundation. "We've reached critical mass," she announced to Earth's leaders. The probability children aren't just changing local space anymore, they're triggering a cascade effect. Reality itself is choosing sides. The Council's worst fears were confirmed when they lost contact with an entire sector of space. It wasn't destroyed or conquered in the traditional sense, it had simply stopped operating according to their understanding of physics. Their ships couldn't enter, their signals couldn't penetrate. It was as if that region of space had decided to follow different rules. General Anderson recognized the strategic importance immediately. "The aliens can't fight in our reality any more than we could fight in their rigid physics. Every probability zone we create is like claiming territory in a war they can't even participate in." But humanity's victory came with a price. The probability children were changing too, evolving faster than anyone had predicted. Young Mark Wilson, now 13, had begun seeing patterns in reality that even Dr. Ward's instruments couldn't detect. "The universe isn't made of rules," Mark tried to explain to the adults. "It's made of stories. The aliens tried to write the ending, but we're teaching it to imagine new possibilities." The Council made one last, desperate attempt to contain the spread of human chaos. They deployed their most advanced technology, attempting to create a barrier between the probability zones and their remaining territory. They called it the reality lock, a wall built from pure physics, designed to separate their universe from humanity's influence. It was their greatest mistake. The probability children saw the reality lock not as a barrier, but as a challenge. Led by Mark, they gathered at the edge of human space, their minds linked through thought space. What they did next would be remembered as the moment humanity truly became the galaxy's greatest nightmare. "They're trying to lock reality into place," Mark told his fellow probability children. "But they forgot something important: locks have keys, and keys can be copied." The children didn't try to break through the reality lock. Instead, they began to copy it, understanding its pattern and rewriting it. The barrier meant to contain them became a tool for their expansion. Each section they copied became a template for changing more of the galaxy. Dr. Ward watched in amazement as her instruments recorded the event. "They're not just ignoring the laws of physics anymore," she reported. "They're learning to read and write them like computer code." The Council watched in horror as their last defense was turned against them. The reality lock, designed to protect their physics, instead became a catalyst for spreading human chaos. Each copied section created new probability zones, expanding faster than ever before. "We tried to write the rules of the universe in stone," a council member lamented, "but they taught the stone to change its own writing." As the probability zones continued to expand, something unprecedented began to happen. The boundary between human and alien space started to blur, not through conquest but through transformation. Reality itself seemed to be choosing the path of possibility over certainty. General Anderson stood before the United Defense Command, watching the reports flood in. "We're not winning the war," he realized. "We're changing the nature of the battlefield itself. The monsters they feared aren't conquering their galaxy, we're teaching it to evolve." The probability children could sense it too. The universe was learning, adapting, choosing. The rigid physics of the Council was being replaced by something new, a reality that could dream, imagine, and grow. The monsters had done more than escape their cage. They had convinced the universe itself to join their rebellion against the impossible. 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, the universe itself made a choice. The final confrontation didn't come with weapons or fleets, but with a fundamental shift in the nature of reality itself. Mark Wilson, now 14 and leader of the Probability Children, stood at the edge of the largest probability zone ever created. Behind him, 1,000 young minds reached out through thought space, their consciousness spread across the galaxy like a web of dreams. "They wanted us to follow their story," Mark said to Dr. Ward, who watched in awe as reality rippled around them. "But we're writing our own ending." The Council's last strongholds were failing, not through violence but through transformation. Their rigid physics couldn't compete with the adaptive reality that humanity had unleashed. Each passing moment saw more of their ordered universe dissolve into a sea of possibilities. Dr. Ward's instruments recorded the final moments of the old reality. "It's not just a war anymore," she reported to Earth's leaders. "The universe is going through an evolutionary leap. And humanity is the catalyst." In the council chamber, the last emergency session began. The High Speaker's crystalline form vibrated with resignation as he addressed the assembled representatives. "We tried to cage monsters, but instead we created gods. Now we must decide, evolve or fade away." The choice was made for them. The Probability Children, linked through thought space, reached out to the very fabric of the universe. They didn't attack or destroy, they offered a gift. The ability to dream, to imagine, to evolve beyond the rigid constraints of fixed physics. General Anderson watched from the bridge of his ship as reality itself began to change. Stars danced in new patterns, space folded in impossible ways, and the barriers between thought and matter grew thin. "We didn't win by fighting," he realized. "We won by showing the universe a better way to exist." The probability zones merged into something entirely new, a reality where both human chaos and alien order could coexist. The laws of physics became more like guidelines, adapting and evolving based on the collective imagination of all species. "This is what they feared all along," Dr. Ward said, watching the transformation spread. "Not that we would destroy their universe, but that we would change it so completely they wouldn't recognize it anymore." Mark and his fellow probability children felt the shift in every atom of space. The universe wasn't just accepting human influence, it was embracing it, using their chaos as a template for a new kind of existence. One where reality itself could learn, grow, and dream. In the end, the Council made the only choice they could. They surrendered, not to human military might, but to the new universe that was being born. Their species began to adapt, learning to see possibility where once they saw only rigid laws. The monsters they feared didn't destroy them, Mark explained to a gathering of both human and alien children. "We showed them that being a monster just means being something they don't understand yet. And now, they're learning to be monsters too." The transformation swept through the galaxy like a tide of dreams. Each species discovered their own way to shape reality, adding their unique perspective to the evolving universe. The probability children became teachers, showing others how to unlock their own potential for impossible things. 2 decades after humanity's first encounter with the Council, the galaxy had become something entirely new. A place where physics and imagination danced together, where every species could write their own rules while respecting the dreams of others. Dr. Ward, now aged but still recording the changes, made her final entry in the project logs: "They quarantined us because they feared what we might become. They never imagined that our evolution would help them become something greater too. The monsters they tried to cage have transformed the galaxy not through conquest, but through possibility." The universe had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that rules were meant to be rewritten, that reality itself could dream, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who show us what we might become. In the end, humanity hadn't just escaped their cage. They had convinced the universe itself to evolve beyond its own limitations, creating a reality where being a monster simply meant being brave enough to imagine something new.